Hello students. So today we will be discussing a few questions from the last year CBSE Board examinations. Alright. Now while checking the midterm and the quarterly's question paper, right, I find that most of you mess up in the most scoring part of the paper. Now these 5 marker questions that you get over here, the most scoring part of the whole question paper. Now these just require you to write 5 words. If you know them exactly, you score 5 on 5. You don't need to go into paragraphs, you don't need to write lines after lines over here. Now I've taken one question as an example for you. Now the question says, identify the given diagram and name the parts 1 to 5. Now before going on to writing what is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, do not miss the important part of the question that says identify the given diagram. So look at the diagram over here. What do you see it is? It is the female reproductive system, or you can also write the female reproductive tract. Alright. Now we go on to the next part of the question, that is name the parts 1 to 5. Do not write all of these at one go. Alright. Name, because each of the 5 markers have 1 mark separately. So name point number 1. So what is it? Point number 1, it is the fallopian tube. Right. Now I would suggest that whenever you are solving such questions, also go through the functions of each of the following. Now what does the fallopian tube do? It helps in the carrying of the eggs through it, right? Now point number 2. What is point number 2 over here? It is the ovary. Now look at point number 3. It says, what is it? It is the uterus. Now in question point 4 and 5, that is where I find the most difficulties. Students find the most difficulties over here. So point number 4 is the cervix. Now you can also write cervix canal, but the main point is that you should mention this word. Now 5th, we have the vagina. Now doing these 5 questions, right, you get 5 on 5 exactly over there. You don't have to write what the functions are, what any of it is. You don't go into writing paragraphs after paragraphs for this question, and you have already gotten 5 on 5. Now, elongation of this or extension of this question is, one question that we had in our examination was the plant pollination, right? Pollination and the female reproductive tract of plant. Over there too you have these 5 questions, like 5 pointers. They give you the diagram, right? They give you the diagram and they mention what each of these parts are. Or they can also divert the question in the manner that they'll give you the function of each of these points. For example, they'll give you the function of this point and they'll tell you then mention what one is. Okay? So the point will vary. Now please look these questions properly, thoroughly, because I believe that these are going to fetch you full marks without any difficulty. Now look at the second question. Alright. This question again is a previous year question. Now the question says a student is observing the temporary mount of a leaf peel under a microscope. Now temporary mount of a leaf peel, right? Now the word important here is the leaf peel. Now draw a labeled diagram of the structure of stomata as seen under the microscope. Now this diagram again, right, this is a very easy question. It is usually given as a 2 or a 3 marker question, right? Again, very easy and very fast to do. Now over here you just have to draw the stomata. Now while drawing the stomata, remember in your NCERT you have 2 diagrams for the stomata. They are open and closed. Now again you can mention both of these, but proper labeling is important. Also if you are running low on time, just go through the basic diagram of the stomata, right? You make the guard cells, then important here is drawing the epidermal cells. Now see, the question says leaf peel, right? It is not possible that you will only see the stomata over here. So that is why it is important to draw the subsidiary cells or the epidermal cells surrounding it. Clear? Now when you are doing this, look at it, you draw the guard cells, you draw the stoma, then what are present over here? There are the chloroplasts present, then you have the vacuole, Alright. Now just mention one more thing, that is the thickening of the inner cells, right? The inner guard cells has a thicker wall. Now label diagram. Again, just drawing it will not fetch you marks. You have to label it again. What are these? These are the epidermal cells. Alright. Then what are these? These are the guard cells. Again, you can draw two diagrams, remember, the flaccid condition and the turgid condition, that will be the open and the closed condition. Then you mention these are the chloroplast. Now what will the chloroplast help in? Photosynthesis, right? Then you have the vacuole, and ultimately you have the stoma, that is the aperture between two guard cells. Okay, and here your diagram is complete. Now what I suggest, if this is the page that you are given, right, you mention the question number, you draw the diagram and do it inside a box. Alright, it makes your diagram cleaner and also it helps you keep it to a space, right? Do not go haywire over here. Now while labeling also, what I always tell my students is, while you are labeling it, draw a line with a pencil over here, just a rough as a lighter shade of the line, and then mark all of them at the same parity, alright, in the same line, and then just rub this line out. Just rub this line out and then your diagram is complete, alright. And this is here, you get 2 or 3, whatever the markings is allotted. If your diagram is correct, if your labeling is correct, you get the required marks, alright. We'll move to the next question. Now, this is again a broad question, alright. It is usually given as a 5 marker or a 2 plus 3 marker, alright. Look at the question. Describe the structure and function of nephron with the help of diagram. Clear? Now here are 2 parts to the question. Define the structure, function, and with the help of diagram. Now while you are answering any question, remember you are allotted part marking for each of the words, each of the questions that has been asked. What are they saying? Structure, function, and diagram. So only doing the diagram or only writing it will not suffice. You have to just go through each of the question, answer it roughly, and then go to the next part. Alright, and always while answering, make sure that you are doing it in separate paragraphs. Do not mix it up in the same category, alright. Then it is not possible for the examiner to separate your answers. Okay, it is not the work of the examiner to separate your answers with respect to the questioning. Now this from the same question, same thing, you had another question the previous year. This was 2014, and in 2013 again you had been asked a question like, draw a well labeled diagram of structural and functional unit of kidney. Okay, now they have not given you nephron directly, they have just mentioned structural and functional unit of the kidney. Okay, now here only one part of the question is asked, labeled diagram. What I suggest is, whenever you are answering such questions where they have not given you directly what to write, right, or what to draw, like they have not directly mentioned draw a nephron, they have given you structural and functional unit of kidney. The first line of your answer should be, the structural and functional unit of kidney is nephron. Alright. You start the answer with this line and then go into the drawing. Clear? I'll do the diagram, but let me take on the next question. Now explain the mechanism of urine formation. Now remember, these two are together. These two questions were 3 plus 2, right? Now mechanism of urine formation. Now how do you write this or approach this question? Now mechanism of urine formation, the first line of your answer should be that urine formation takes place in the nephron or the structural and functional unit of the kidney. Alright, you mention this line, and then what are the mechanisms? Instead of going through writing paragraphs, right, which makes it very tedious for the examiner to check and also for you to write in points, alright, or bullets. What is the first thing that happens for urine formation? It is ultrafiltration. So mention ultrafiltration, give a semicolon, write a few lines about ultrafiltration. Write about the Malpighian corpuscle, the glomerulus, Bowman's capsule working together to filter through, right? And then the second part, the second function, the second mechanism will be your selective reabsorption, and then tubular secretion, right? Now what is important is you write these 3 points, okay? You go through these 3 points, you write a few lines on these. Approach should be like this, alright? Then your answer is complete. Next, the second part of the first part of the question, which stated structural and functional unit of kidney. As I suggested, while you are answering, the first line should be structural and functional unit is of kidney is nephron. Okay. Now that for the diagram of nephron, remember for diagram in biology, right, I find most of the students finding difficulty in diagrams, right? You run away from diagrams as if it is going to eat you up. But again, the diagrams are the most easiest part. You don't have to mug it up. Now if you approach the diagrams as you approach the theory, it will make it easier. So for example, if you are reading through the kidney or the excretory system, alright, you take on the functions of the excretory system, what it is doing, why it is there. Then you look at the structure of the nephron. You look at each of the structure, okay? You look at each of the structure, and if you look at it, right, if you draw the Bowman's capsule, alright, then go on to draw the convoluted tubules. Now while you are drawing the convoluted tubules, the way I am drawing it, it is not necessary that you follow the same pattern, alright. Just you have to mention the convolutions should be there, alright. The convolutions should be present, and then you are done. See, now I have drawn the Bowman's capsule over here, okay. Now what is going to enter here? The afferent arteriole. And then you have the capillaries, a network of capillaries forming the glomerulus, and a thinner or a narrower efferent arteriole will come out of it, alright. Now a way to remember this, alright, a trick to remember which one is going in and which one is coming out, always remember E stands for exit, right, E stands for exit. Now the one exiting the Bowman's capsule will be the efferent arteriole, alright. The one entering with an A will be the efferent arteriole, okay. See, and then while we move on, see, now what you have to mention here is scientific drawing. See, I am not drawing it very artistically, right, I am just drawing it scientifically. Now after you have done the convoluted tubules, remember the loop of Henle before it begins, it becomes narrower, right, the diameter of the tube will become narrower, and here you have the loop of Henle, alright, the loop of Henle will come up. Now again there will be a little bit of convolutions like twists and turns, but remember the convolutions in this part is not as convoluted in the proximal part, alright. And then ultimately it will enter the broader tube, that is the collecting tubules, alright. Here it is. Now while you are doing it, right, just remember to draw arrows. Before this arrows, it does not make sense that where it is functioning. See, this is where the urine formation will take place in this direction. That is why I am giving arrows over here. Okay. Okay. Now this completes your diagram. Now with the labeling part. As I have told you in the previous questions, that while you are labeling, try to stick to one side of the page, alright. It is not absolute necessity. A few of your labelings can go on either side, but try to stick majority of it to one side. Also, remember to keep it is of utmost importance to keep your diagrams neat. You can be very artistic, you can be very good in drawings, but you make a mess out of your labelings and it is very difficult to make it out that which part is what you've labeled as. Then your number reduces over there. Now see, I've mentioned afferent arteriole and efferent arteriole. Then what comes next? Now what I suggest here is, because you've heard of something called the Malpighian corpuscle, right? So Malpighian corpuscle, what is it made up of? The glomerulus, and the Bowman's capsule, right? This is it. You can also write it over on this side and then ultimately mention it as the Malpighian corpuscle. Okay. Next is your proximal convoluted tubule. You do not use short forms. I am writing over here like this, but use, even if you write PCT, make an index at the bottom of your drawing and mention what PCT stands for. Then you have the distal convoluted tubule, and then you have the loop of Henle. Now while you are drawing, right, while you are labeling, please stick to proper spellings. Loop of Henle, right? I always see loop of Henle's, loop of Henle. Do not go into this. It is just a simple Henle, right? Just this much. And then you have the collecting tubule. Now see, most of the time what happens is you are given how many diagrams, like how many labelings you have to do, alright, maximum 4 or 5. Or sometimes the question is twisted in the manner that they will give you the function of a certain structure, and then they'll ask you to mark that particular part, right? For example, if they write it as that where ultrafiltration takes place in nephron, alright, what are you going to mark? You're going to mark the Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus, that is the Malpighian corpuscle, alright. So please stick to these questions and then you will be okay with it, alright. And then after you're done with the diagram, alright, don't forget to make a box out of it, right, and then mention what your figure is, right? Figure, mention nephron. For example, over here if you are not given as nephron, right, what was the question? I'll just go through it. The question was, just a minute, structural and functional unit of kidney. So while you are labeling the figure, just write the structural and functional unit of kidney, give a semicolon and then write nephron. Clear? Okay. This does with the question, right? And then let us take on the next question. Okay. Again a diagram over here. Draw a diagram of nerve cell and label. Alright. Again over here labeling can be same thing. They can mention that what parts you have to label, or they can mention you like give 4 labels or 5 labelings in the diagram. It will vary as per the requirement of the question. Alright. Now diagram of a nerve cell. Nerve cell, you will start with drawing the, okay, we'll start with drawing the cyton or the soma, then extend the axon, alright. Now again do not be very artistic, just be scientific, alright. Now the axon, remember, is a one stretch of line. There is no intermediary, there is no breakage in this long structure, alright. Now then you will draw the nerve terminals, alright. Now do not go into drawing the synapse, that makes the question complex. It only says nerve cell, alright. You just have to draw one neuron. Don't go into draw the synapses over here. Now the soma or the cyton, the cell body that is, right, it has shorter extensions or branchings. What are these branchings for? These branchings are for carrying or capturing the impulses, alright. Now again I have seen students drawing these branches, like you go into drawing branches as if you are drawing the roots or the leaves, right. Don't go into this. Don't make your diagram very dirty, or just keep it clean, neat and simple, alright. The simpler you have, the faster you do it and easier it is. Then there is the nucleus, there are Nissl granules, right. And then if you go into draw the myelination, then you have these myelinated part which are present over here along the length of the axon, alright. Now with respect to the labeling of this diagram, alright. Now this is the cell body, these are the dendrites, alright. Then you have the nucleus. Now here what I want to suggest is, if you do not, some students they do not draw the myelinations, alright. If you do not go into drawing the myelinations, just simply mark this as axon, okay. Do not go into drawing node of Ranvier or Schwann cells, because without myelinations, node of Ranvier, Schwann cells, they do not make sense, alright. You will just make a mess of it. Now the Schwann cells are present along here. Okay, and then this is the myelin sheath, you have the myelin sheath. Then the space or the gap where the myelin sheath is discontinuous. If you see this, wait, I'll just change the color. Yes, this part where two myelin sheaths are absent, right? The discontinuous part, that part you will mark it as node of Ranvier. Then you have the Schwann cells. Okay, and then you have the axon terminals. You can also write them as nerve terminals. Okay, now this diagram, once it is completed, all right, again I'll stick to the same thing. Make a box out of it. Once your diagram is completed, write what figure it is, and then you're finished with the diagram. All right. Now please remember, if you are asked to label like 4 or 5 labelings or parts, you have mentioned, they give you the topics like which part you have to mention as per the function of it. It does not mean that you're not going to draw the whole thing, right? You draw the whole thing, you draw this whole diagram, and you only label the parts that you've been asked. Now if you look at the way I have labeled, right, you will see that I have maintained one side, right, and I've stuck to all caps. Clear? Now this is the ideal way of completing your diagram. Now with respect to diagram, one thing that I would want to suggest is, since you all keep leaving diagrams out for the last moment, it is the most wrong approach that you all do. Alright, because if you keep on doing the diagrams with the chapter itself, it becomes a habit. Alright, it becomes a habit. You don't have to give extra time or another set of days to prepare just diagrams. Alright, the diagram should be at the tip of your hands. You should see the question, you should start drawing. You don't, in the examination hall, you are not going to have time to rub it out, make what proportions you want to do. Those should be done during this time, right? Just before, a few months before your examination. You should stick to what exactly. If you get a question, just make an approach in your head that if I get this question, this is how I'm going to approach it. All right. Now with respect to diagram, again, one thing that I would mention is, if this is your page, right? Now I find most students doing it, like if you've completed your answer till here, you have written, and the next question that you're going to do is a question on diagrams, and you have only this much space left. Do not incorporate your answers over here, all right, the diagrams. Do not incorporate the diagrams in that tiny weeny space, all right. Just go to the next page and start afresh, all right. So that is it for this part of the questions, all right.